All right, everybody. Michael Main here, Main Performance PC, and I am creating this video so that I can properly educate everyone on how to delid a CPU and reinstall the heatsink, or sorry, the IHS back onto the CPU. First of all, deliding. What is it? What does it entail? Deliding is basically the removal of the stock Intel thermal paste of an eighth generation Intel CPU. It's actually, Intel's been putting this thermal interface compound or material, TIM for short, for a few years now on a few of the generation. I believe the 4000 series all the way up to 8000 series, maybe even the 3000 series, I can't remember. But deliding hasn't really become a thing until recently, within the past 2 years or so. And that mostly has to do with the ability to overclock our CPUs to, say, 5 gigahertz. So the stock thermal compound, it's likened to like toothpaste. It's just terrible stuff. Does not do the job very well. For stock clock speeds, it actually works fine. But when you're trying to overclock, you can, by deliding, you can actually get upwards of 20 to 25 degrees Celsius difference in by deliding and using a different thermal compound, which we call liquid metal. And liquid metal, this is a brand, Thermal Grizzly, Conductonite. Basically, it's gallium. Gallium is a liquid metal that it does have a freeze point, so it will harden at certain lower temperatures, but at higher temperatures, or room temperature, it becomes a liquid. And when you heat it up, like inside of a CPU, it becomes a liquid, or more of a liquid. The advantage to it is it has a very good thermal conductivity. So by applying this between the CPU die and the IHS, you conduct the heat away from the CPU die into the IHS and then into your cooler. And then your cooler's job is to carry that heat away from the processor and allow it to run cooler. So I've got a 8700K here. It's going into a customer's build, and we're going to go ahead and open that up tonight. I am decided to go to the shop here and create this video for you guys to show you the correct way to delid and relid a CPU and to correctly apply liquid metal. So we are going to do that. So first step, we're going to take the CPU out of the box. And this is how your CPU comes straight when you buy it from anywhere. Newegg, Amazon, any of the suppliers out there. We get our CPUs and all of our computer parts from a retailer that is basically just business to business. So they are the ones that supply Amazon, Newegg, and all the other PC hardware retailers with all of their hardware. There's a few different business companies out there. We use D&H. There is no difference in where you get your stuff from, regardless of what some people want to tell you. They all get the same stuff. Now, that part of what we do when we bin a CPU is we try to order CPUs from different business-to-business retailers or distributors, I should say, and try to get certain lot numbers. And I'll show you those right now. I'm not sure how well this is showing up on the video, but there's a lot number that is right here. And of course I cut it right where it needs to be. Batch number, V815B102. We really care about the B102. So B has been found over the past few months to be a fairly decent lot number. And what that means is the silicon, the quality of the silicon in that lot number or batch number was found to be of slightly higher quality than others. And it changes from time to time. So companies like us, Silicon Lottery, they're constantly chasing the lot numbers, trying to figure out the average and trying to get CPUs that will overclock better. So it changes over time. Anyway, so this is a delidding tool. We get our delidding tool from a company called Rocket 88 or Rocket Cool. James is a really nice guy, really cool guy. He makes our custom copper IHS for us. We use these in all of our delitted and bin CPUs. It's beautiful, and the thermal performance over doing a delidding with the stock IHS is really good. Easily 5 to 8 degrees Celsius better. So what we'll start off here by doing is putting this top on here on the delidding tool. We're going to take these screws, we're going to tighten it down. Hopefully this is showing up in this video correctly. So we'll tighten that down. I'm going to use all 3 of these. Then we're just going to take this Allen key, we're going to tighten this up, we're going to go until you hear it pop. There's the pop. Loosen it back up, push the tool back in, and we loosen everything back up. Now, we delid and bin CPUs every single day. We've been doing it for the past few months since we even started offering this stuff. I've delidded a few CPUs over the past few years, but never really thought to sell it or sell that service commercially until recently, when it kind of started really taking off and becoming a hit. So this is the stock IHS thermal interface material right here, directly onto the die, and then you'll see this black RTV. So Intel uses RTV, and they leave a little gap right here. And what that gap does is it allows any negative pressure, sorry, not negative pressure, but any humidity that might be inside of the chip, instead of trapping that inside of the containment between the IHS and the PCB with the die, they are allowing a little portion of it to escape. And that just prevents overheating, things like that. So we never put the stock IHS on. There's nothing necessarily wrong with reusing the stock IHS, but we're main performance PC. We are all about performance. So we use this this copper IHS, which is about 15% bigger than the stock one. And the advantage to having a bigger IHS is more surface area, more area for the heat to escape the die and go into the IHS and then be sent over into the cooler. So we're going to discard that. We don't need that anymore. We're going to use this. So that's in the correct position. We're going to set that off to the side. We're going to take some of this Arctic Clean thermal material remover. Stuff is really great. We're going to put it on top of the CPU. Sorry, rather on top of the die of the CPU. And we're going to clean off the die. Now, I'm just using a terry cloth rag. We're gonna spread that stuff around, get the whole surface of the PCB moist with it. You can see we've been using these for a few different CPUs. We do this almost all day long. It's actually been quite a hit, these delid CPUs that we're selling. Not going to go into our sales figures, but we sell quite a few. All right, so that's cleaned off. Now we're going to use this scraper. This it's from China, Unlimited Innovation, the opening tool. I'm not sure what it's opening, but we use it to scrape off the black RTV that Intel applies to the processors. So we're gonna get that in there. We're gonna scrape that off. Sorry, I'm trying to keep this in the frame. Now you don't want to contact the tool to the die. Definitely want to be careful when doing this. You're not gonna hurt anything unless you start getting wild with it. Now the point of this is to make the surface of the CPU as smooth as possible for when we reapply the new IHS. So just give me another minute or so, I'll have this cleaned up. A little bit more up here. A little bit more here. So I'm gonna move the camera down just a bit. All right. So I think that's pretty good. All right, so we're gonna take this again. We're gonna do one more final cleaning. A few drops is all it takes. And it is okay to get the CPU wet with this stuff. You're not gonna hurt it. In fact, you also can use electronic cleaner, such as pure alcohol. And you can get the entire CPU completely submerged in it, not gonna hurt a thing. All right, so that's pretty clear. Sorry, pretty clean. All right, next what we're going to use is the black silicon, the RTV. Use this stuff to make gaskets for valve covers, all kinds of neat stuff. Pretty high temp limit, so it's perfectly safe for a CPU. First thing we're going to do is you'll see that there are 4 gold contacts directly next to the CPU's die. These contacts have to be protected from the liquid metal. It is very conductive. It's metal, so it's conductive. If the gallium or liquid metal seeps off of the CPU die and touches these contacts, your CPU dies, most definitely. So we want to protect that area. Some people use nail polish. A lot of places actually recommend the nail polish. I do not, because the nail polish has acetone and alcohol in it, and alcohol and acetone will eat away at the gold contacts of your CPU. So it's not a good idea. A few other places also recommend the use of, say, super glue. This stuff right here. Again, don't want to use this. The gases that it puts off when you apply it and then let it sit slowly eat away at the gold contacts and makes them dull and basically hurts their conductivity over time. And if that gas is trapped and that gas follows underneath the CPU and where it's sitting here in this deliding tool, it'll go underneath here and it'll start fading out these gold contacts and reduce their conductivity. One of my employees one time was deliding a CPU, didn't quite understand at the time that super glue would do that, and he delided the CPU and then put it inside of the CPU's case and closed it. When he closed it, the gases that were let off from the super glue basically enveloped the entire processor, ate away at this plastic, and that CPU is dead. Would not work anymore. So don't use super glue, don't use nail polish, don't use things like that. Use RTV and use it sparingly. Don't use a lot. You don't have to use a lot of this stuff. You'll see as I go along here that I'm not using a lot. So we're gonna put the CPU back into the deliding tool. This is just a nice place to have it. It doesn't, fall away from you and do anything crazy. First thing we're gonna do, we're gonna squeeze out a little dab here, this black silicon, or black RTV. We're gonna put it right on top of those gold contacts, and that's all you need. Just cover them up just a tiny bit. Set that off to the side because we will need it a little bit later when we put the IHS back onto the processor. The next step is the application of the liquid metal. First thing we want to do, we've already cleaned the top of the die with this thermal material remover. Next is we're going to prep the surface with the surface purifier. We're going to put about 2 drops onto there. And then immediately wipe it off. And that is going to purify the surface. It does need to dry, so we'll just blow on it a little bit. And that CPU die is now prepped and ready for liquid metal. So this is where a lot of people mess up when they are applying this stuff. They think, oh, I gotta cover this CPU on this stuff. The more the better. No, we are going to do a very, very tiny amount. I would be surprised actually if the camera is even picking that up. So I'll try and put it up there and move it around. I can't see if you guys can see that, but it's a tiny bit. So next what we'll do, we'll take our little swab here. You can see we've definitely been deliding some stuff lately, a lot of it. Excuse me. And we are going to smooth this out all across the CPU's die. Very, very thin layer. In fact, when you do this, you almost want it to look like it's not liquid. Just a very, very, very tiny bit goes a very long way. But you do want to make sure that there's gallium, or sorry, liquid metal across the entire surface of the CPU die. Perfect. That is what we want. So I'm going to try and show you guys where we're at with it. Actually, I think we might actually need just a tiny bit more. That is it right there. Suck up a tiny bit of it. That is about it. Actually, that could have been too much. Yeah, I think it might have been too much. So, we can actually correct that by applying a little bit less on the IHS. That is too much. So we will correct that by applying a little bit less on the IHS. And there we go. So we want to match the size of the CPU's die with the IHS. It is going on this way. So we're going to copy the pattern. It doesn't have to absolutely be perfect. Since we're using so little, you shouldn't have an issue with it running away. And if it does run away, and it falls into the socket of your processor or of your motherboard, bad stuff does happen. All right, so that's pretty much perfect. That's where we want to be. Now we can actually use the cotton to soak up some of this extra gallium that we've laid down. That is pretty much perfect. That is what we want. So the next step is you need to secure the IHS to the processor. So here's your IHS alignment tool. We're just going to snap that on there. So that is ready. And we're going to apply 4 small dots of RTV onto this IHS. And then that is all you need to secure it to the processor. Now, the reason you want so little is because when, sorry, I got some RTV on my hand. That tube's been through a lot. It's got a few holes in it. So when you squeeze it out, it just goes all over you. So this IHS, when it's sitting on top of here, it's sitting the inside portion of this IHS actually rests on top of the die. If you were to push down on either side, the IHS actually has a gap between the PCB and the IHS so that you can get as close contact as possible between the die and the IHS. So you're using this RTV to secure the IHS in place when you do that. So we're gonna go ahead and just drop it in. And we will use these nuts to secure it. And then there's this big nut on here that basically sits on the very center of the IHS. And the reason for that is you want to push the IHS down onto the CPU's die so that it is making perfectly flat contact between the IHS and the die. You don't want the IHS to be off-tilted, off-kilter in any way. You want it to make perfect flush contact with the CPU's die. So as we push down, we're putting direct pressure down onto the CPU's die and the IHS. That is ensuring a perfect contact. Now, while this is resting, that RTV is going to cure, and then that CPU or that IHS is perfectly on the processor. And that's it. We'll end this video at that. If anybody has any questions on anything that I've talked about here, please feel free to hit me up. You can also email support@mainperformancepc.com. You can go to our Facebook page, post there, any questions you might have, any other tips or ideas. You know, I'm definitely not saying that my way is the only way. That's definitely not true. But this is what I found to be the most consistent for us. And this is what we sell our customers. All right. Thank you very much.